I don't even know where to start with you, because you are like everything everyone hopes to be, you know, like you're an artist, but you're a writer, but you're a dancer, but I mean, like everything creative is what you do. And I think oftentimes, in my experience anyway, and I think especially in the pagan community, people struggle to choose one thing to do, or struggle in terms of like, you know, I do all of these things, or I love all of these things. How do I choose one to focus on? And you do all of them, right? I mean, you literally do all of them. I've been following you online and seeing you working on a new deck, that you're a new tarot. Is it a tarot or an oracle?
It's an oracle.
And you're doing all the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And you had these all laid out all over your kitchen floor.
All of the studio floor, yes, for cats to lay on for divination purposes.
I mean, is that your process when you're doing art like that? Just lay it all out. Does that help you? Like, what is that process like?
I think it's part of, I'm a Gemini, but my moon is in Virgo. And so I like to be able, like, it's a sense of accomplishment to have like these little pieces of paper or wood, depending on however I'm like, this particular oracle was all little sheets of watercolor paper.
Yeah.
So just being able to like put them on the floor and be like, okay, these are sketched out. These, I have a word on them. These have been painted, these are finished. It just gives a sense of like, okay, we're somewhere, and it calms my brain a little bit. But then also, as from an artistic point of view, you get to see like, how are all these images working together? Because I think some folks, especially people creating art digitally nowadays, you know, it's like it goes in a file and you finished one and that's it. Like you're doing one thing at a time, or you might have them in the background. It's not quite the same as seeing everything all at once. And I think an oracle should relate to itself. And so you need that check to be like, how are the colors working? How are the images and the lines and the symbols? Are there too many of one thing? Or, you know, just right, to get that just right amount.
You know, and that's such a good point, because you are such a visual artist, right? Everything you do is so visual. You know, I am not an artist. Okay. I'm a cook. I'm a kitchen witch. It's funny because my degree, like my, you know, real world Muggle degree is actually in design, but I would never classify myself as that kind of a fine artist, visual artist. I can't, or I could draw. I can't really now. Never been a painter ever in my life. But for you, and especially what you're doing in terms of creating an oracle deck, it almost seems like you're creating one giant picture out of all of these images. So it must be very helpful for you to step back from that and see everything laid out, like you said, how they relate to one another and how they coordinate visually, because it should be one whole composition.
Right. It's a system. And I would say, like, relating it to food, like when you're planning a whole meal, right, is you think of how's the start and how are the flavors going to interact and how are we going to finish that, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be like, well, we're going to start with sushi, but then we're going to go to like pasta and then finish it off with, you know, a popsicle. Like what?
Right. I mean, unless it's that time of the month, and then yes.
Right. Well, and you do that for yourself. You don't share that with other people.
Unless I'm with all my girlfriends and it's like, listen, we're going to have sushi stuffed tacos followed by pizza chasers and, you know, ice cream. I don't know. Ice cream lasagna. I don't know, but you know what I'm saying. But yes, I agree with that 100%. Now, was it similar in terms of, you know, visual art and the actual creating of the images on the cards as it was for what the meanings of the cards are and how they roll out in terms of their divination properties? How are you doing that in this process with the visual art and the divination?
So each oracle has been different. So the Liminal Spirits is working with spirits into itself. So I'll put that one aside. But since the magical body oracle, or the anatomy of the witch oracle, we're still working on the title. We'll know soon what the official title is.
Right.
It's, you know, I come up with all these concepts. So try to think of everything as a system. It's all very organized of like, okay, what things do you need to know when you are dealing with the body and doing divination for it? So particularly in sense of your magical practice, right? Of what do you need to jumpstart your practice, or what is the problem, or where should you focus on, and relating that all to the anatomy of a witch. So that started off with words and concepts. And then from the words, I think about, all right, what is composed in this image? What does it mean to have adorn, right? To adorn the body. There's so many different layers. It's putting on jewelry, it could be put on makeup, on clothing, but it's also a mask, right? Like if you put on a masquerade, you're also adorning the body in some ways. And to incorporate all of that is like looking at these symbols, and not only my personal symbols, it's a lot of me, right? So it's like, welcome to my world, come on in. Hopefully it's not too weird in here, but you're here anyway. Doors are locked.
I love it. I love it.
But also could be trying to think about something that taps into my vision, but also is accessible to other people, especially a wide range of people. And when you're dealing with a body, that's also almost mind-boggling of like, okay, I have to think past gender, I need to think past sexuality, I need to think about past the size, age, race, all these different delineations and identities that we kind of put on ourselves to make it available for everyone. So that was also neurotic making.
Yeah, what a challenge that would be. Oftentimes we think of magic, and I talk about this a lot in terms of kitchen witchery. We think of it as, or we practice it as an exterior practice, right? Where we are lighting candles, or we're lighting a bonfire, or we're lighting our incense, or whatever it is we're doing, we're putting energy out, right? And then when we're doing something like kitchen witchery, we're taking it in, right? We're focusing, and then we're physically taking in that food into our physical body. So what you're talking about in this anatomy of a witch and this oracle of what does a body need, how does a body feel, down to lungs and organs and all the things we don't think about, that's very internal. Is there a reason why you chose this now, right? In a time of COVID, in a time of getting in touch with in our inner workings, be they spiritual or physical? Is there a reason why you chose to do this project right now in this time frame?
Well, the idea for the book, which will be coming out in June, and then the Oracle, which will come out next year, all started well before COVID. But it comes out of my observation that so many people are out of touch with their bodies. And I really believe that you don't need to be a dancer, you don't need to be an artist, you're human, you already got that. You've got the main thing, right? You are embodied, you're a spirit embodied.
You are a meat popsicle.
Yes, you're here, you're very tasty. Let's work with that. And we have this baseline, but when you look at the history of magical practice, particularly in the last 50, 60 years, right? When you go back, actually now we're in 20, so I guess we're going to—
Oh my God, I know.
What is time?
I don't know. People are like, 20 years ago. Oh my God, it was the 70s.
Yeah. Oh, shit. Oh my God. We think about the 50s and 60s of being this time of like free love and the hippies and, and all this kind of awakening of the body and psychedelics, like at that end of the paganism spectrum. And then as you get into like the 80s and 90s, it's more of like, it's our minds and academia and, and they're super, super focused up here. And we go from one end to the other. It's like, well, we really need to exist somewhere in the middle of, yes, fascinate our mind. Yes, know history. Yes, be in touch with, the logical aspects of our community and our environment, etc., but the physical body as well. And so kind of getting past the dance part, because so many people hear the word dance and just shut down. They're like, nope, I'm out here. Again, the doors are locked, you can't leave.
Right.
Now you've consently chosen to be here. And so with this concept of tapping your magical practice back to your body with the anatomy, I think it's an easier tool rather than having the idea that there must be a dance, there must be a choreography, you must be in shape, you must have, all of the things that we put as blockages to being fully embodied. And I've seen people just like how their ritual has changed and their practice and their lives have changed just by like, oh wait, I can do this with my breath. Oh, if I use my hands and I feel my shoulders and like, oh, it changes everything. Like, yes, more of that, please. So the concept of the anatomy is like, all right, how do we do this? How do we incorporate, you know, these major aspects of the body that are symbolic, but also biological? And
it's so interesting because we don't really talk about that in the pagan community. I mean, in the witchcraft community, I mean, maybe I'm in the wrong place, but I mean, I don't, with the exception of one or two ecstatic rituals, really, I have not experienced anyone talking about the body or the anatomy or the physicality of how our physical bodies hold magical energy or hold healing energy. It's always mind and heart and chakras and energy, but it's very, it's not in the physical grounded. I can hold someone's hand. I can wrap my arm around someone. That's very, very important. And that speaks to me personally. You know, oftentimes it's always, everything is without, it's never within. Mm-hmm. And when we think of within, we don't think about the things that we take for granted, like, you know, my lungs are working, or, you know, my circulation is working. We don't think about those things until they stop working, right? You don't think about, I have healthy lungs until you maybe get COVID and you can't breathe. And then you're like, oh my God, did I completely take that for granted? You know, I was in a meditation the other morning, and it was a gratitude meditation. And the facilitator said, you know, in getting you into the meditation, grounding into the meditation, the facilitator said, you know, feel the sensation of just sitting, just the sensation, and how feeling sensation, just feeling your feet or your skin against the ground is a miracle, because there are people that don't have sensation there. You don't have to feel it. The fact that you can just feel that, or that you can smell the fresh cut grass, just that sensation is the miracle of the human body. I love that you are discussing this in terms of witchcraft. I just think it's absolutely brilliant. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I'm so excited about this book. Now, I don't know when this episode's going to air. It might air after your book comes out in June. Probably will. So get the book. So cool. So what did you discover? I know for myself in writing my last book, it was very, you know, whenever you write a book, right, it's so emotional, and you go into these deep haunted places of self. Like you said, this is me. You know, you're like, hey, come on in. That was not too crazy. What did you learn about yourself and maybe your body image issues, or the way you feel about your physical body throughout this process?
You know, as I said, it was like the idea was proposed before COVID, but as I was finishing up the first draft, it's when we kind of started ramping up into it.
Yeah.
And as I was doing that very first draft, I had a massive migraine. So I'm looking at this deadline, and I had set time, right? Especially pre-COVID, we have a very busy schedule, and that we're often traveling and going around. So I'm like going, okay, I have 4 weeks to work on this book, or 3, whatever it is, before we, last year was like, go to PantheoCon, do this, do that.
Right.
So trying to concentrate and focus, realize like how much your body can stop you from, you know, really transmitting ideas, and at the same point even trick you, because you're like, this is mind-blowing, this is fantastic, and then you read it later and like, what the fuck is this shit?
What the hell did I come up with?
Yeah, like, because I was like running downstairs and telling my partner, I'm like, there's this amazing thing about like our cells have memories, like your heart, if your heart's transplanted to somebody else, they'll have part of your memories, and that's amazing because that means your heart's thinking, which is great. Like I'm still very much excited about this thing. But like trying to translate that beautifully into text did not quite exactly happen, to the point when I saw my editor a couple weeks later, I was expecting her to punch me.
Oh my God.
Like, she's like, we're just not gonna talk about it.
You're like, I'm sorry. I had a migraine. I will just start that over again. It's fine.
Also, that's going in the trash bin. And so once I had to get to that second draft, we were well into all of this. And you know, thinking back to March, April, and May of last year, where every time you felt like a little too hot, you're like, is this a fever? Like, is it allergies? Or, you know, is it COVID? Is, you know, all of these different things. You're like hyper focused on your body. In things that you would normally not on a daily basis be thinking like, I was a little hot last night while I was sleeping.
Yeah, normally you push through. I'd be like, oh, I'm just having allergies. I would just push through it. It's fine. And I would go, you know, go, do, right? Go to this event, go to that event, and all these things. And instead you're like, maybe I should just stay put for a little bit.
Gotta have some elderberry.
Yes. Oh my God. All of the elderberry.
All
the elderberry. So that's just, so now let's just be very clear. I mean, you've been writing and you've been teaching and you've been doing all of these things for a really long time. I mean, so in terms of like this new project, is this something that you have kind of, like you said, this was something that has been building for a while? Was it something you always wanted to do? Or was it something that all of a sudden you're like, you know what we should do? This is a book that I really like. I've never heard anything like this, you know. I mean, it's so different, so original. No one's talking about it. Where you like, the community needs this, you know.
So it's kind of like where do ideas come from?
Usually they come out of my ass. Like I'll be like in the middle of driving somewhere, or I'm like in the shower and I'm like, I had this great idea. Where did it come from? I have no idea. But if someone else like come up with something good, you're like, I don't know.
I have to say something right now.
Right.
After I actually finished the second draft, like, and got happy with the book and like everything really cohesively came together, I was reading Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, which I highly recommend. It's a very easy read. And she talks about in there that ideas themselves are sort of a consciousness. Like if we, you know, I know I've said magic starts with thought, and that's my kind of like beat it into everybody. Magic starts with thought. It's like, okay, if thought is influential, then why can't ideas be conscious in their own way, right? And that's somehow a way to explain why also describes the slutty muses, where you can have, you know, 10 different people from all over the world who've never met each other, who've never interacted, have nothing to do with each other, all kind of had the same idea at the same time. It's like the idea is like, hey, how you doing? How you doing? Somebody's
slutty muses.
Yeah, somebody's gonna get this going on. So perhaps there's more of that in the world, but it just was going, okay, you know, I like to organize. I like to think about how my favorite things are metaphors and teachings. Like, okay, what metaphor will reach out and touch people? Like, food is one of my favorite ones. I love food metaphors, and I love ocean metaphors, and like make people angry sometimes with the ocean metaphors, which is hilarious.
How in the world would that make someone angry?
I think one time I was like, jellyfish is a sort of an amazing, like, you know, metaphor for how they move and float and absorb things and also be prickly. And someone's like, what the fuck's this about? I'm like, jellyfish. How could you?
Jellyfish are very cool, but they scare the crap out of me.
Right, like witches should be that, right? Witches are cool, but they should also scare the crap out of me.
That's a great metaphor. That's a great metaphor. Because I always steer clear of jellyfish. But I don't know. I mean, don't steer clear of me because I'm a witch, but I will sting you, motherfucker. Like if you are not careful and you bump into me, I mean, listen, I'm a native New Yorker. So if you bump into me, yeah, I'm going to bump you right back. Okay. Just like a jellyfish.
What's going on here?
What's up here? What's going on? You talking to me? You have a problem? You know? I don't know. I think that's a great metaphor for witches. I mean, somebody got mad at you for that.
It's funny. It just makes me laugh. You know, I like
so how does this book compare in terms of your creative process to your other books?
So that's a good question. I have to think about it. So the previous book, so Weave the Liminal, is very much about being the book that I wish I had when I was a witchlet, you know, 2.5, 3 decade, oh God.
Right. I thought 20 years ago was the 70s.
Way back then. So in a previous time, in the late the late 1900s.
The late 1900s. My husband just said that to me the other day. He's like, you know, the like millennials call it like the turn of the century or the late 1900s. I was like, no, that's so wrong. And he's like, is it though? And I was like, fuck, damn it. And then I said, oh, we were watching something. I think we just started watching The Nevers. I don't know if you've started watching the show, but
but it's on my list.
It's so good. It's so good. Okay, it's so good. Anyway, I was like, oh, I just love that they put this at the turn of the century. And Justin's like, which century? And I was like, oh, fuck you.
Damn you.
Damn you.
It
never makes you feel older, right?
Yeah. I think when it was around like 2000, 2001, like the early, when I was doing a lot of, I mean, still do a lot of Art Nouveau style dance and such, but I had some sort of tagline that was sort of like, and into this century. And it was so cute back then. It's not funny now.
It's not funny now.
It's not
funny now. It's not funny now. But you were saying when you were writing your other books,
right? So
how that compared.
So Weave the Liminal was just like almost not to say a brain dump because that makes it feel like it's inelegant, but it has its system. It has the right system, which is looking at where you come from and what inspires you and how you use your time and your environment and plot your path. So like that was a whole kind of like, I need to get this out into the world. Boom. Sigil Witchery was sort of the book that hit me in the back of the head. Because I was teaching the workshop. I had put, people asked me like, oh, how do you make your sigils? And I had to deconstruct my method because it's something I've been doing since
forever,
a century.
Right.
So I'm like, how do I do this? When you do something for yourself, right? It's like when someone asks you, well, oh, what's that recipe? And you're like, I don't know what the amounts are. It's this and that, and who the fuck knows? It's just, it comes out right. So I had to go back and do that. And when I first taught it, because I'm like, oh, no, who's going to get this? And people are like, this is amazing. You should write a book on it. I'm like, oh,
maybe I should.
Llewellyn's right upstairs. Is that Patheos? So I'm like, hey guys, think this should be a book? And they're like, send us the proposal, please. And then yes. And so that was a whole lot of building up on that idea. So I guess it does. They all do start with just the idea that I get very excited about and go, how do I put this out into the world as a tool? And that's always, I think, where my brain is always minded, like, how do I help people? How do I express these ideas in such a way that it's helpful and applicable to other people? Because I don't want to sell a church or a temple or a system of, like, here's how you give me dollars, like, no, I want to make people's lives better. And then in the process of that, if I can make a living, that's great. But it's not I don't want minions. I want followers. I don't want, so a lot of people kind of plan that out, like, especially in dance, like with certification, you get certified, and then you have to keep upping your certification. I'm like, no, you can go make sigils and never buy another book from me again, just as long as you found something that helps you be a better witch, a better magical practitioner. Then like, my job here is done.
Yeah, I always feel like, I always say I'm not an expert, like I'm not an expert in this thing or that thing. I'm an expert in my own practice, and I'm going to share my practice with you. And I'm going to share it through books, or I'm going to share it through recipes, or I'm going to share it through ideas. And if you could take anything from that, then I'm happy. If I can, like exactly what you're saying, like it's great to have people that follow you, social media or whatever, but it's great to have people that are really connected with what you're doing, and want to continue to learn from you. But I always feel like, especially with my most recent book, I want people to like take it and make it their favorite recipe book. Like it should be falling in 10 years. It should be falling apart. It should have grease all over it. It should be like the thing that you never throw away and be like, oh no, this has too many good recipes in it, and you should write all over it, and that sort of thing. And I feel like my favorite witchcraft books are like that. Like I have some books that I've had for, 20 some odd years since I started practicing. And I've got like, everything's like earmarked and I've got little post-it notes and stuff like that. Isn't that like the greatest gift if somebody like comes to you and is like, I bought this book and it's my first witchcraft book and it was your book. And I have all these, and you're like, oh my God, it's so well loved.
It is the best. It's just that somebody has bonded with it and it meant something to them, and just make people's lives better in some way.
So, okay. So you have a degree from RISD. You're a dancer, you're an artist, you're a writer, but how do all these things fit together? Like, I want to know, going back even further, is there anything in your life that wasn't, people always ask, what pagan people influenced you? What witchcraft books were your first books? But before that, what non-pagan or non-Wiccan influences from way back, like if you were a kid and you go, oh, that was the first time I was sort of awakened to this idea, or the first time I noticed that I maybe found this path, like that I was not 100% this way, I was more this way, because we find this path, we don't choose it, right? So what are those things? Can you talk a little bit about like maybe how you knew you were headed down that way, and then how these things, how do you go from, going to Rhode Island School of Design, getting your degree in, I'm going to guess it's fine art. You have a degree in fine art, right?
Yeah, fine art.
Right. So how do you go, like, what did you think you were going to do for a living versus, right, versus what you're doing now?
So
I know it's
like 3 hours for that.
I know. It's okay. You're just chatting.
So, so my parents sent me off to art school pretty early. Like I started taking classes around 3.
Oh my goodness.
And
cool parents right off the bat. Cool parents.
Well, yeah, they're both fairly creative folks, and they're both have their backgrounds as journalism. So kind of creative folks. And at that time, we are in the early 80s. Mary Lou Retton was gymnastics was a huge thing, right?
Huge thing.
Yeah, so it's like they're like art class, and you're like, but I want to be a gymnast, and then you bring me to gymnastics class, and I was not a terribly coordinated child, and I'm pretty sure, like I vaguely remember there was this point where like, maybe after a couple of weeks, they like, the teacher brings me over to my parents and go, maybe you might want to try some other activities for Laura.
No. Oh, you poor thing. Oh, you poor thing.
Yeah, so like not coordinated enough. They're like, well, art's safe.
Here's some crayons.
Clay, crayons, right. Draw stuff, stack of paper.
You're fine.
Yeah, they're like, it's fine. So that was very, early is like art, not to say art is safe, but it was also a really good task to just kind of settle me down, because I would get into just making the art. I have 2 older brothers who are much older than me. They're 7 and 9 years older. So by the time they were getting into, their early teens and such, my parents were like, what do we do with this one? Oh, we just crayons.
Yeah. Just sit over there and draw something. Oh, look, she'll be quiet. We just put her over there. She's fine for an hour.
Yeah, just make art, or I'd be outside in the backyard. And so my grandfather always loved to take me to parks, and we would go out into the woods, and around South Jersey, there's a lot of little creeks and such. And so we'd go to there or go to the beach. And so it kind of instilled this love of like paying attention to nature, to looking at seeds and what's under rocks and all that kind of cool stuff. So it was either drawing inside if it was raining, or it was playing with moss. Outside and sticks and such. And I had a little cottage, and my father and my grandfather made me a little witch's cottage. Okay, it's never called a witch's cottage, but it really looks like a little Baba Yaga hut with a Dutch door.
My goodness.
Like in person size, like now it would technically be a tiny house.
Oh my God. How was that, like in your backyard?
Yeah, it was in the backyard.
Is it still there in South Jersey? Because we should go.
I think
have a tea party.
I'm not quite entirely sure if it's still full there, but the people who bought our house after we moved, they also had a daughter named Laura, and it said Laura's Cottage on it. So it was just like, that was like the selling point for the house, was this little house that had that.
Oh my goodness, how sweet.
you're like, it's just meant to be. So I think when I like stopped by somewhere in, oh God, 10, actually longer than that. Like, what is time? They told me this, like they showed me a little bit. And I think it was still there, but I don't know now. It's again been over a decade, and at this point, the house is the house is almost 40 years old. So I don't know if it'd still be there. But anyway, so this being a sense of like playing with the outdoors and making potions and such. And the ocean as well, because we always spend time down in Ocean City and Cape May and all of that. Real Jersey Shore.
Real Jersey Shore. Real Jersey Shore. Not that crap you see on TV.
Yeah, real sand, real ocean,
yes.
Real crabs.
Yes.
And so at that point, I really wanted to be like an artist, but also a marine biologist. Because I love the ocean and like seashells and collecting that and organizing them.
Or putting them in their like own little categories, and I love it.
This is a gastropod, this is a bivalve, this one comes from here, go to the shell shows, you know, into the sea turtles and the whole thing, and like fiddler crabs and the whole, like I knew so much about the lives of marshes. I've like probably forgotten, like probably read a book on like sea lore if I really like dug up into the depths.
Wow. How old are you at this time? Like 10, 11?
This is probably going from like 8 until 14.
Oh, wow. So you were like marine biologist, artist, little making potions in your backyard.
Yeah.
I love it.
Little forest sea witch.
Little forest sea witch.
You can do both, right?
Fuck
spend
yes.
your winters in the forest and the summers at the shore.
Fuck yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. So that's kind of like your first inkling of going like that connection with nature happened super early for you.
Yes. And then, so like, that's the natural flow of things. Then you have the media influence. And so I just rewatched The Last Unicorn a week ago.
Oh my God.
And I can't tell you how many times I have seen that movie over the course of my life.
Yeah.
But, you know, now that I have the DVD, that's the 25-year, you know, like, and I got to think about that.
It makes you want to throw up in your mouth a little bit, right?
Yeah, just like, what?
Yes. Yeah.
And looking at that is sort of like, not only is it sort of a strange queer awakening in so many ways, if you start taking that movie apart, you're like, But the focus of magic and how magic is applied from Mommy Fortuna, who sort of has a very Baba Yaga / harpy / you know, all of that, to you know, people who try to manipulate magic and the environment and all of that, like that, I at that point, if you'd asked me when I was 5, 6, 7, whatever, but like, oh, it was about the unicorns, I'm going, that was the afterthought. Like the whole world, like how the forest was and what that looked like that has been an imprint on my brain. So there's that whole vision of things. And then like all the movies of the 80s, you watch Karate Kid again, you're like, there's a lot of metaphysics in this movie.
Yeah. Have you seen Cobra Kai though?
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Okay. I forced Justin to watch it, and I'm like, I think we watched the whole first season in like one day. I couldn't turn it off. It's like 2 a.m. I'm like, what do you mean there's no more? What do you mean there's no more? And then it's so good. Okay, sorry, we digress into our 80s fandom, but Cobra Kai never die. It's so fucking good. Okay, back to The Last Unicorn. I was terrified, and I mean terrified of the Red Bull. I don't remember a lot of things from being a kid. We could discuss my therapy sessions later, but I don't remember a lot of things from being like a little kid. But I must have been, what, that movie came out in like 83, something like that. So I was like 3 years old, maybe 4 years old, and going to the local movie theater with my mother and my older sister, who again is much, much older, and being terrified out of my mind by the Red Bull, and like the whole family had to leave. We had to leave because I was like hiding under the seat. I was so afraid of this animated bull, you know, and as a little baby, you don't really understand what, like you said, the implications and what they're trying to say, but I was totally terrified. And then like watching it over again, you realize what they're talking about and about, you know, evil and manipulation and just all these things. And you're like, oh, maybe my little baby soul knew how bad it was. You know, I haven't watched the movie in a really long time, but I did just get a collector's edition of the book. And I haven't cracked it open yet because I kind of want to keep it pristine. Like I want to read it, but I don't want to read it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
do the thing.
I do want to do the thing. Wow. Okay. Were there any other things like that? Like movies that kind of connected you, like you see it now when you look back and you go, oh yeah, that really, like you said, Karate Kid, like that really shaped the environment of how you thought about the world when it came through media, music, cartoons, television, things like that.
Absolutely. So about that same time, so the first movie that I remember seeing in the theater was E.T.
Oh, wow.
And I think like, I'm pretty sure that predates The Last Unicorn.
I could Google it, but I don't know. It's all about the same time. It's the same couple of years.
I remember being what I found most disturbing about that movie. So like, you love E.T., right? Even though it's like strange, goofy looking creature, but like the part where they're covering the house with the tubes and the plastic and all that, and the government officials, like, there's your fear of government fucking things up. Like right there. It's like, you're like, oh, these are the bad men. All of these
terrified me.
Yeah.
Terrified me. Like to this day, I can't watch E.T. because I'm like, no, it's terrifying. Why would they do that? He's just a little monkey. Like, I don't understand the problem. He's a monkey alien. Like, what's the problem? Yeah. Scared out of my mind.
And that's another thing, like, I probably watched it a fair amount as a kid, but like, again, I have it on DVD somewhere, but like, I think I've sat down once and went, all right, I still have some anxiety. I'm going to go off. There are other ones you would think at the time, like, think, what are the really impactful ones? You would think Legend and Labyrinth, again, unicorns and such. I only saw a lot of those in bits and pieces, and it wasn't until later that I'm like, oh, that's where this is from.
Yeah.
I was more like Lady Hawk. Like, I love.
Oh my God, Lady Hawk. Okay, like we need to get together and have like an 80s fantasy movie day because, oh my God, Lady Hawk. But it's so interesting because those things really influenced us, you know. I have a friend who's a little bit older, and she kind of missed. She wasn't like the VCR generation, right? Where like we would see a movie and then be able to rent it. Like you'd be able to, and then you'd rent Labyrinth, like, and watch it 100 times. At least that's what we did, you know. I mean, Willow, Legend, right? And you would just fall into those worlds of magic and myth and the occult, and without even realizing that you're falling into them, right? And then I have friends that are a little, like I said, this one friend, she's a little bit older, and she was like, no, she's like, you know, I would go to the movie, watch a movie, and that'd be the last time I saw it, because she was like a little too old to get the VCR thing. She was like already off at college when that happened. So, you know, I completely understand what you're saying about how those things influenced you as to like right now I'm sitting at home, but I'm not in my aesthetic, right? But like my witchy aesthetic and what I think that should look like. And there's a scene in Legend at the very beginning where she goes into the cottage where it's like that big kitchen, and she takes the biscuit and she eats the biscuit, and I remember thinking to myself as a child, that to me is so magical, this kitchen where there's all these good foods and there's all these fresh ingredients and there's herbs hanging from the ceiling, and just going, you know, feeling the magic of that space being in the home in a kitchen. And I look at that now and I go, how did that influence the path of my spiritual practice? Right? Do you see those sort of parallels for you in your practice?
Definitely. And it's again, it's the little weird thing. So we had, so my dad was an audiovisual specialist as well. Like that was kind of what he did his main living for, from the time I was born until about 15, when he got hired for another company. We moved to South Carolina. So he had the capability of being able to tape things from
TV.
From the TV. So we would have, you know, so like that, like, yes, we would rent things, but we were pretty, you know, my dad being self-employed, it was pretty on the cheap. So we had lots of things where you knew where you were going to fast forward through the commercials to get through things, you know. And so like, I think of all, you know, all sorts of weird random stuff that just, you know, like the mix of Mel Brooks and of course like The Princess Bride and you know,
right. Yes.
all of those things, you know, like they make up parts of your personality and how you perceive the world. And you know, I think about the John Hughes movies and how they affected how you perceive relationships and what high school is going to be like. And now like watching that going like, these kids are 15 in this movie. It seemed like they were so mature when you were a kid. And like, they're freshmen.
Yeah.
None of this makes sense.
Yeah.
What the hell's going on here? This is an unhealthy relationship.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of a lot. My brain's been more on the, that's been influential. But
yeah, now like what we see now, especially you're talking about like those old John Hughes movies, and you know, everybody's like, oh yeah, 16 candles, and you watch 16 candles now. Like, I don't have children, but if I had children, I would not let them watch that movie. But again, like the time was so different, and what, not saying that it was okay by any stretch of the imagination, but socially what was acceptable then is different than what is socially acceptable now. And now we know better, so we do better. And it's interesting because we look at, and this conversation is so crazy because we're talking about witchcraft, but it's impossible for me to talk about witchcraft and paganism and my spiritual path without talking about who we are as individuals, right? And growing up in the 80s and the 90s, so much of who we are as people, specifically as women, I think, is shaped by those ideas, right? Women are supposed to look this way, act this way. The relationships between men and women look a certain way. And where we saw those things different, when we saw women empowered, wasn't in those John Hughes movies. It was in these movies where we had magic, legend, witches, you know, where we had, you know, where there was fantasy, you know, I mean, come on, Willow, Sorsha. I mean, who didn't want to be Sorsha, right? I mean, I don't love her. She kicked me in the face. Like that's, you know, that's who we wanted to be, you know, at least for me. And it does really, I think, influence getting back to your current project, right? Getting back to your current project about the body, right? And about the physicality. And specifically, I know you were saying earlier about you had to be so understanding and inclusive about different types of bodies, different sizes, different shapes, different genders, different colors, you know, because when you strip off our outsides, we're all the same on the inside. But how we feel about our outsides, so much of that comes from the media we ingest, not just today, but what we ingested as young people growing up. Did you struggle at all with any of that in writing your book?
Yes, I've had a fair amount of time to deal with a lot of that baggage. I was in an abusive relationship for 15 years.
Yikes.
And that was a lot of time to sort out, you know, all of that internalized thing, and to kind of figure out more of like how I felt about my body and feeling better about it. I'm gonna say I haven't figured out everything. It's the body's always changing. But I have so many friends right now who have been finding out what their true identity is, how they, you know, where they are on the gender spectrum, all of that, and seeing their struggles as well. And then kind of reflecting back on things that I'm like, oh, wait, you know, you hit that. Oh, I kind of dealt with that too here. And where did I, you know, where has that processed in my brain? When looking at, you know, I consider myself to be fairly gender fluid. Whether that has been because I grew up in a situation where I like, well, we don't know what this, we have 2 boys. We know how to raise boys. but you're supposed to be a girl. Girls only do these things, right? That aspect of it, to dance. And in the dance world, especially belly dance, is seen as an ultra or hyper feminine dance. But at the same time, so many of my dances were crossing the border between what is feminine and what is masculine, and doing roles that were a little bit more aggressive, more folkloric. A lot of the folkloric dances are very, very obviously very body oriented, a little more raunchy in some ways, rather than being like, oh, I am, you know, this feminine dream.
Not ballet.
Yeah. And, you know, it's also, you know, some people reduce it down to like being tits and ass, and like, well, I don't have much in the front. I'm never going to quite look like that. So never going to be like this perfect kind of show pony approach. All right. So that was a lot for me of my 30s, particularly, was kind of sorting that out and being like, it's okay. Like, you're not going to be that. You're going to be you. They also, growing up being, you know, of mixed background, also has been like, don't fit in with everybody else who's all very nice and neat and doesn't have hair everywhere. You know? Oh
my God. I feel that. Yeah.
So there's so many landmines. But I hope that within this book, so there's a sigil in there and a little bit of ritual about kind of overcoming the shame that we feel about our bodies, and delving into that and kind of going even past that. It's like, once you connect to the blood and the bones and the muscles and that, and how that makes you feel, you reconnect with that inner part of yourself, and then can slowly work your way out. And it's not going to be like you read the book in a week and you've figured out all your problems. Like, it's
if only.
This is a slow release.
Right. This is a long haul, people.
Yeah.
Long haul.
It's gonna take a while. I think I saw someone who was like, I didn't figure out all my problems. Like, if you read my book and you figured out your problems in just like 48 hours, let me know about that.
Yeah, let me know about that. Right. Well, like you said before, you're creating tools for people to use to work through their own shit, right? Like, you know, magic, spirituality, body image, these are highly personal, highly individual concepts, you know, even just the concept of self, whether it is in a physical body or in a spiritual body, it's highly personal. No two people feel the same way about themselves, right? So for you to create these tools for people to be able to find that, or hone the identity of self as a witch, as a body, as whatever, you know, physical body, spiritual body, emotional body that you are, to create the being that is you to the best of your ability. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. And to do it in the way that you're doing it is just, it's outstanding. It's really outstanding. I really want to talk about your artwork as well. Let's take like a 2-second break, and then we'll get back and talk about your artwork, and then we'll let everybody know where they can find you and how to connect with you. Okay, so we'll be right back. Dude, we've been talking for almost an hour. I can't believe I forgot to take a break. Oh, we start talking about 80s movies, and I'm like, Dawn, bring it back. Fucking bring it back. Nobody wants to hear. No, that's exactly what people want to hear about. I'm just saying. You're awesome. Do you need to get up and pee? Do you need to do anything? You're good? Okay.
I'm good. I still have some tea. So
I was going to make a cup of tea, and then I just lost track of time. I have 2 kittens, except they're not kittens. They're like, I know you have like 4 cats, right? 4. I had 3. One passed away like last week. She was old, and she was not well. And the 2 cats, the 2 kittens, they're almost a year old, but they're this big. Like, they're Sirius is 17 pounds and Ollivander is 15 pounds. And they're black cats, and they're just hilarious. And they were, you know, Sirius was laying on me before this, and I was like, buddy, you got to get up. I gotta do a podcast.
No.
They're the best. Okay.
This is where you live now.
Yes. This is mine. You're sitting here. All right. Here we go. And we're back with the amazing Aurora Tempest Zakroff. I have to say that with gusto. Zakroff just feels like it needs gusto. Okay, so obviously your book that's coming, or by the time this airs, is probably already out, which is The Anatomy of a Witch, a map to the magical body. And then the coming after that is the Oracle to go with that. We talked about that at length, and I'm just super excited about it. But I really want to talk to you about your artwork. Because it is such part of your practice, your magical practice, and who you are as an individual. You have, okay, I told you before, like I kind of stalked you a little bit, like in the nicest possible way, except you wouldn't know that it's me because I have a different name on Facebook for my personal, but now you'll know because you'll know what my face looks like. But your artwork is insane, like very infrequently. I love art. I love fine art. I love, I love real artists. You know what I mean? Like I'm not the kind of person in fact, I have a giant blank wall on my house, in my living room, because I refuse to buy like a shitty piece of art from like Bed Bath & Beyond. Right. And Justin and I are like constantly waiting for like, if we're going to be inspired by a painting we see somewhere, not that we go anywhere, that we would see beautiful paintings, but that's not the point. The
potential is there.
The potential is there. So, I mean, at the holidays, you had these gorgeous tree ornaments, like Yule tree ornaments that blew my mind. One was like a hare, and then one was like a goddess, and they were just unreal. And then recently you came out with these stickers, and it's like this broom with a little cat on it, and one of them had a rabbit on it. And I was like, I'm going to have to get that tattooed on my body. Like, it just, do you hear that a lot? Do people always like, I want your work tattooed on me? Like your artwork is the very rare type of artwork for me that speaks to something deep inside of my witchy heart. There are a lot of people that create pagan art. There are a lot of people that create, that paint things that are magical, or make art that is of a certain genre, fantasy art, and it's all beautiful. But every once in a while, there is an artist whose work speaks to your heart. And is it a visual representation of what you see or what you think when you think of magic? And you are one of those artists for me. And I need to hear about what your drawing process is, what your painting process is. And if you can hear Sirius is it Sirius? No, it's Ollivander. Do you hear him squeaking?
Yes.
There's a 15-pound cat. That's what he sounds like. Yeah.
That's the best.
Yeah. So can you talk to us a little bit about your journey of art and artistry, and how you went from, getting your BFA to doing beautiful pagan art? Was that something you were always doing, or did that evolve like the rest of your work?
So when I think back about the art I was making in grammar school, high school and such, I was often telling stories in my head. And whether it was about mermaids or dragons or, visions of things, or horses, of course, lots of horses. Right? And so there was a storytelling aspect. And I was also very much, we talk so much about movies, but I was really an avid reader. All of the MS book challenges and the Scholastic Book Fair and all of that.
Oh my God, Scholastic Book Fairs.
Yeah. I
feel like we grew up the same person. It's very weird. But you were in Jersey, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I grew up on Long Island. So, they're kind of the same.
It's there. It's just right there.
Right there. We do this a lot. We talk with our hands. We eat a lot of pizza.
I can't speak if my hands are tied. So
I agree.
So, so I was doing, I was reading so much, so all different stories, and think about like the Egypt game. I was really into Egyptology and all of that, and different kinds of folklore, and a lot of Native American, indigenous. I was reading things like The Clan of the Cave Bear, like Jane old books, like when I was 12.
Yeah.
My mother's like, why are you so much into them? All they do is like drink tea and have sex. And I'm like,
because that's what I want to do when I grow up, drink tea and have sex.
Formative books, right? you know, and also there's that sort of self-sustainability, like my side of the mountain was all about like going out to the Catskills and surviving in the woods and in a sort of fun way, and have a pet falcon as
yes,
like you do.
Lady Hawk.
Yeah, right. All these things.
And it comes back around. Yes.
It's all interwoven. So, you know, kind of dealing and seeing all of these different things, we're incorporating them into my artwork. And around 13, 14, I think, I got the Nick Bantock series, Griffin and Sabine, which are actually like right there.
Right there.
As well as like 8 of his other books. And those books, the way that story and mail and opening up these things and the images, all of that coming together was a revelation of like, this is very dreamlike, it's very magical. And so that really set off into my high school years of creating art. And then going off to college, and RISD's like, if for people who don't understand about art school, is that like something like RISD is like you have all these majors and they're very fine. So I majored in printmaking, which is the art of multiple originals, which is but really it's the fine line between art and design or illustration, because you had painting, you know, and like the art stuff, and then you had illustration, which was another department. And so I'm like, I like both of these things. I want to tell stories, but I also want to make art. And at that time in the 90s, they lived in separate worlds. Like you go to the same school, but like telling stories isn't for art. Like, that's bullshit. That's absolute bullshit.
Yeah.
Like why do these things separate? I will pick a major that's about technique. Do what I want. And it was in that whole process, which is very alchemical in its own way, because you're dealing with acids and metals and you know, these core elements of ink and things that will kill you. It's great. And yeah, you enter into the printmaking building, they're like, congratulations, printmakers don't make past 65. Yay! Either well preserved or dead. It's great. That whole thing of kind of delving into art and into that process of it was like, there was very little of hyper focusing on the art or illustration you're creating. It was more of like, how are you dealing with the technique? How are you doing monoprints? How are you doing etchings? Whatever. And then there was and what are you saying with your art? But that was like the last layer. And so it's like, if people didn't like it, fuck them.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It's, you know, the critique process, really important, really helpful. I think more people should go through the critique process and understanding how to give and receive critique, by the way.
Yes.
It would be great in the community. But dialing back in, it was then where I was at the same time leading a pagan society at RISD. I formed the first pagan society for RISD for Brown for that area. And so
cool.
I couldn't find a group I wanted to work with.
Make your own. And that's a theme. Almost every single guest that I've had on has been in a situation where it was, I wanted to do this thing. There was no way for me to do this thing. So I organized it myself. Yeah. I think it's very interesting to see that all of these people that have similar backgrounds as you and I, that are in similar lines of work, all have a similar story where they created a space to be who they are because it didn't exist. And I just love that. Anyway, this is Ollivander. You can see him.
There's a Gracie. Hold on. Hi. Oh.
For those of you who cannot see, oh, look at her. For those of you who are not watching this video, I highly suggest that you go on and watch this on YouTube when it gets posted, because it's like Black Cat hour right now. Laura's got her Gracie, who's a beautiful black cat, who's waving her tail right in her face. She's like, look, mama, this is my butthole. Isn't it beautiful?
She's like, maybe it's either time to feed, it's not time to feed, but otherwise if I was wearing a hoodie, she'd be in it.
And my Ollivander just had a snack and he is cleaning his little face. And he's just, look at him. Oh, he's so cute. Oh,
good. Hi. Yes,
yeah, I'm talking to you. Handsome. I'm totally obsessed with my cats. I'm literally inches away from being a crazy cat lady. Like if COVID never ends and I have to stay home with my cats forever. Not that I want that to happen. I don't want that to happen. I want COVID to end. I've already gotten my first vaccine, but I really love being home with my cats. I'm just putting that out there. And when you're home with your cats, you don't have to wear pants. And that's enjoyable. They don't care if you wear pants or a bra. And I personally think bras should be outlawed after all of this. And go back into the world and have to wear a real bra it's really disturbing. Are you stretching? What are you doing? Oh, he's scratching.
Getting comfy.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Anyway, I get distracted by his little face. Your art, which is so amazing, and how you transitioned from, you know, and getting into telling stories as an artist.
So in leading, because of course, like, you're going to make a group, someone's got to lead it, and you know, when you're that age, you're like, I am invincible.
Yeah.
I will design ritual, like reading the stacks of books are there, and I'm like, I could do better, and kind of did. I have still people who now, again, 25 years after that, go, I've never forgotten those rituals. Those were amazing. Those are the best rituals I've attended in all these years. Like, wow, good going, 21-year-old me.
Yay me. Yay past me. And you're like, I don't know what the fuck I did. Like, I don't remember. I love it.
I looked fabulous. We put on music, we danced, there was drumming, I don't know. And so doing these rituals and leading folks and trying to do the research of figuring, like, okay, well, we have these different seasons and how's this working? That's all filtering into my art. It was also at that time in the 90s where, especially here in New England, you know, Rhode Island in particular is a weird little state. For anyone who doesn't know, Rhode Island's a weird ass little state, founded by like rejects and outlaws and such. And there's a lot of witchcraft in Rhode Island. You know, everyone thinks about Salem, but Rhode Island's loaded. It has been for a very long time.
Yeah.
But side note, so coming back in, where was the brain? Rhode Island. Here.
You were doing your rituals at school. You were just, you know, getting how we went from art into telling stories, pagan stories with art.
Yes. But there's a bit of a political climate, right? Of coming out as a witch, as a pagan, being public about it. Now we don't really think that much about it. I think throughout most of North America, that it's kind of like, oh yeah, I know someone who's wicked. You know, like you can go pretty much anywhere and somebody's going to give you that line and you'll be like, okay, it's fine.
Yeah, specifically in New England, I have to say, like, you know, and I mean, when I say New England, I'm talking about like Northern Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. Yeah. Right. I'm not talking about Stamford, Connecticut, and I'm not talking about New York City, or New York City maybe a little bit, but like, yeah. And again, 20 years ago on Long Island, you know, I mean, I couldn't say that out loud, you know. Here in New England, you know, I mean, I have a whole living and a whole business based off of my spiritual practice, and it's called Cucina or Kitchen Witchery. And people are like, cool, whatever. Like, they just, okay.
It wasn't like that 30 years ago, right?
Exactly.
You could still, I mean, people were like losing their children, they were losing their jobs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that was a really big focus. I did a whole exhibition about the burning times, which, you know, like, yes, people are going to go deep into like, it's not, yes. It wasn't about the fiction so much about the reality of people who were women, who were minorities, who didn't fit the social mold, being persecuted for that. And
women who read books, women who were healers, women who knew how to make a bone broth that would make your cold go away. Yes. You know, women with opinions, women who enjoyed sex. It didn't matter. If you were a woman and you did anything that was out of the ordinary, you were persecuted.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, anything that didn't fit the mold, boom. So that was a major exhibition of art. That was actually my second solo show. The first one was the divine and dealing with kind of goddess imagery and such. And in that process, I was also, I think it was after the Burning Times exhibitions, when I really started playing around with magic as a 2D medium. Particularly how to do spellcraft. So instead of doing spellcraft as, here's a candle and here's the thing I do with this, it was like, can I do a spell as I'm making an image? So I chose 3 areas. I think it was a strength spell, a dream spell, and a prosperity spell. and what herbs get incorporated into the pigments. Am I going to be burning candles? Is there music? Is there a way I move around the piece? What images am I using that incorporate that? So those early experiments were all right, this shit works.
Wow.
So
wow.
that happens. So at the time, I'm creating these images of deities, of goddesses and gods that I'm working with, I'm seeing in visions. I'm creating physical spell pieces. I'm exploring the tarot. So all of that is sort of percolating its way out as I was finishing up college.
Wow. Wow. And that kind of leads right into your, career witchcraft, right? Because you, as we said in the very beginning, you are the last thing from a one-trick pony, right? You do so many different things and you do them all 100% and you do them all well, from performance and dance and teaching and writing and art, and a content provider and an editor and all these things that you do. And just like you were saying, creating a spell in two-dimensionally, going, what were the herbs? What was this? What was this? And being able to see it, again, bring it back to the beginning of this conversation. We're talking about you laying your oracle deck, laying those images out all over the floor in your studio, being able to step away from something and see the big picture. And from what I'm learning about you, that's the way you attack all of your spiritual practice, putting together these elements and stepping away to see the big picture, which is awesome. I mean, what an insight into the way you work and how you teach and the craft and your own personal practice. I'm just blown away by that. I really want you to tell everybody about your Witchual Workouts, because it's such a cool concept. Again, something I don't think anyone out there is really doing. And I think people need to understand what that is and what you're doing there in that space.
So the Witchual Workouts are some kind of mini or daily movement experiments or experiences that incorporate the dance and magic together, or ritual and magic. They do ritual and dance, all of these things into the cauldron, boom, stir it up. Put it in a video. There you go. And it stems from, now I've been dancing for over 2 decades, well past that. I haven't really done my check.
What is time?
What is time?
What is time?
What is time? But so with dance, right? So I approached dance as telling stories. Very early on, it was more of like, because I can't keep a choreography in my head, by the way. Here's my kryptonite. I can learn a choreography, I can get it down, I can practice it, and as soon as I am done doing it, boom, it is ejected from my brain. Like, there are some people who like walk into a dance class, see a whole thing, and they are dancing, and I'm like, how the fuck did you just do that? Because my brain's just like,
well, you're moving, specifically in belly dance, you're moving in a different, I think it's not, I don't think it's always meant to be choreographed, right? No. I mean, it is fluid. It is so, again, bringing it back to being in touch with the body. How does the body want to move? How does the energy of the music make this part of your body feel or that part of your body feel? And you're really just the vessel of that movement.
Exactly. And you want to be able to feel it and be in the moment. And in the true roots of belly dance and the folkloric dance of all of the regions that make it up throughout North Africa and the Mediterranean and the Arabian Peninsula and onward and beyond, those dances, they aren't choreographed. You might have things that are done and presented on stage, but there's a certain set of moves and things, but they are incorporated to the music. And how does the music make you feel? What's happening in the moment? And so I came at it with that approach, and still managed to make a career out of it without being like, I don't know. I don't
really know what I'm doing.
I know I can choreograph, I can write it for other people, but it's not what makes my brain happy. It's, to me, an ecstatic experience. And I really found that as I was teaching and dealing with the dance community, that what really made me happy was particularly teaching witches, pagans, and magical practitioners how to use their bodies. That was the happy space, because everybody was taking that and actively using it for themselves, and not like, how do I make money off of this? Or, you know, I just need to learn, I want a witch choreography so that I can say I can do this. And it's like, right. Fuck that shit. So yeah. That was sort of my surviving thing, the fact I was still dancing and performing, part with my partner in the live music that we create and dance. And the other aspect was, these are the students that I love that are making dance exciting for me. So as we hit COVID, COVID season, yeah. Obviously not going out and performing, not teaching in the way that it would have a live class or a workshop on a regular basis. And I realized around July or August of last year, like, I feel like crap, because I need to have the thing where I'm going out and doing it. Like yeah. I'm not going to wake up and be like, I'm going to do my 1 hour long yoga thing. Like, I'm not even do yoga. I am not a yoga person. I know it's shocking for so many people. They're like, of course you would do that. I'm like, nope, I can't explain it. I will be out in the yard looking at my fish. That is my thing. Go.
You know, I am a yoga person, and I do get up every morning, and at most mornings, Monday through Friday. And I do like a half hour worth of yoga, but people would look at me because I am a chubby woman and go, you do yoga all the time.
Right.
Because it's about creating.
About it.
Correct. And again, that getting back to those body image issues, and that everybody can do everything, mm-hmm. right? So the misconception that belly dance is specifically for female bodied people.
Right.
It is not. Yoga is simply for, tall, fit, model people. It is not. These movements are for our joints and our muscles and our hearts, and all of us have those things regardless of the shape that we're in.
Yes.
And I think that's something that you really are providing with your ritual workouts, is because you're showing people you can do this.
Yes. So because I suck at my that I can't, even my partner's like, we should learn yoga. I'm like, yes, we should. And I'm except I'm going to go for a walk, right? Like I have to find where my mind can be absolutely fascinated by it, and then my body will follow. But dance, I was like, yes, we can do this. And so I thought, all right, if I create these things that I have to do, if I film them, and then other people are dependent on them, then I will get my ass out and do it. And so it's worked really well. It hasn't been since March. So March, I kind of had to take some time off because the book needed to get done. And the issue, even though I don't plan the ritual workouts like excessive amounts, like I wake up in the morning and go, well, what are we going to do today? What, I'm going to pull a card and pull Oracle. What deity has seemed to jump out at me, so that we can do that. That does take a fair bit of mental prep. And then choosing the music and was waiting for the trash trucks to go by and all that kind of crazy stuff. So I was like, nope, we're taking a month off for March, and all of that. And so just trying to get back up into that, because it does take a bit of mental thing. But the amazing thing about having some sort of daily practice, doesn't matter what you do, whether it is a yoga practice or a dance practice or any sort of thing that fascinates your mind and hopefully engages your body in some way, is that it deeply connects you more to the world around you. And it might seem like we're so disconnected from each other right now because of COVID, and that we can't be out there and doing things. But when you are listening to that inner vision of your body, like if you go back and look at the Witchual workouts and look at the weeks, you'll see that there's an underlying theme, even though it's like, the theme for this week is, it's like, no, it's like I could get to Friday and tell you, well, apparently the theme for this week was this, right? And how it was responding to world events, and different things that were happening in the community or in the,
it's just very organic.
Down the street. Yeah, it's like you start to become part of that pattern just by engaging in it. And really like to stress to folks that your daily practice does not have to be something that's incredibly excessive. You just need to have some sort of thing that you do, whether it's pull a card or breathe or stretch. And if you just even do that thing and it's part of your life cycle, right? Like you have to get up and take a shower, then make your ritual part of your shower, right?
Right. Because magic isn't, and spirituality and magical practice isn't, and again, people who are listening to this are going to think I'm a broken record, as I literally say it every episode. Magic is not what we do. It is who we are. It is the way we walk through the world. I think there is a misconception that to be a quote unquote good witch or a quote unquote good pagan, it has to look a certain way. But you know, you're 100% right. If your spiritual practice is to incorporate 5 minutes of movement, whether it is shaking your hips for 5 minutes or sitting in a downward dog, or, you know, going for a walk, or just walking around the house, you know, go out of your house, out of the front door, walk around the house clockwise once to bless your house and your day or whatever. That's practice if you continue to do it on a regular basis. And then all of a sudden it becomes routine, it becomes habit, and you've infused your day with a spiritual practice, which is one of the reasons why things like what you're talking about in terms of body and physicality, and that type of magic, that tactile magic, showering, you know, making that a ritual bath every day, even if you're just, you know, washing off because you got to go to work really fast or whatever. I say it with kitchen witchery, even if you're just throwing something in the microwave, intention, mindfulness is what creates the ritual around it. And then repetition is what makes it the practice. Yes. So you can do these things every single day if you're doing them mindfully and you're doing them intentionally. And now you've created ritual and you've created practice and you've created spirituality every single day that sort of takes you through to the next day, right? So speaking of kitchen witchery, this is my last question, I promise, because I realize that we have gone way over. Okay, so here's a question I asked to everybody at the end of the episode. Obviously, I am a kitchen witch, and what my magic is to cook food for other people. So if I were to cook one meal for you, what would it be and why?
I love food. I love food so much.
What's your favorite thing, or what's something you haven't had, or something that you would want to be made in a magical way, in a ritual way?
It's gonna sound absolutely ridiculous.
No, it won't.
So this is why it's going to sound, I'll tell you why it's ridiculous. First, I'll tell you. So one of my most favorite things, desserts growing up, besides fried dough, amazing.
On the boardwalk.
Well, grandma. So I'd come home from art school on Saturdays in Philly, and my grandma would make me fried dough. And it would be the fried dough with, like, you know, half a thing of powdered sugar. Of course. Yeah. With the metal shakers, did you have those?
Yes, my grandmother's from Naples. Okay, so she had like the big, you know, it looks like a measuring cup, and then it had like this, like a trigger on it. You go like this, but it was broken, so she'd have to do boom, 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 boom. Yeah, yeah. And we had Zapola. Not we didn't call fried dough. We called it Zapola.
Yeah, there some things in South Philly they just tossed out the window. We'll go off another hour talking about that. So we'll come back. So fried dough is the most dear thing, and I can still eat fried dough. But the other thing is there was a bar restaurant in Memora, which is right on the border of Ocean City. For folks who don't know, Ocean City, New Jersey is a dry town because it was founded by Methodists. So there are bars and liquor stores at every exit to the island because you can't buy it on the island. And it's even more of a joke because my mom is a fantastic drinker. So it's just good taste. My father doesn't really drink that much, but my mom, I come from that stock. It's very good. Anyway, so we'd often go off the island to have mom be able to have a drink and have something. So this one restaurant had a chocolate peanut butter mousse pie with an Oreo cookie crust. So the most amazing.
Oh my God.
Crust. And then this buttery chocolate peanut butter and then fresh whipped cream on top. And I haven't had it in a long time. And unfortunately, I'm never going to be able to eat it again because somewhere in the last 4 to 5 years, I've developed a peanut allergy.
Is that so?
Yeah.
What if I made it for you with cashew butter or sesame seed butter, or
I think sesame seed would probably be the closest.
Or sunflower seed butter.
Sunflower, not quite, but sesame. So I love dim sum. There's little rice balls with the sesame.
Oh my God, they're
yeah. So in here we have in Rhode Island we have some really amazing Asian grocery stores that are like really direct from China and Japan and Thailand and such. And so I've been like, we really had a lot of dim sum at home because we've got great grocery stores and we figured out how to do it during COVID. So those little rice balls that have the sesame paste in them, I've like bite into those and like this reminds me. It reminds
of peanut butter. Oh.
Okay, going back to the last unicorn, the skeleton. This is but I remember,
and he's drinking the wine and it's going right through him. Yes.
Yeah, that's me on peanut butter, but I remember. And the ridiculous thing is I had like a PB&J sandwich every day from like kindergarten or first grade all the way up until like high school. It's like,
what happened? But that happens. Okay. I have a gluten allergy and apparently I've always had it because, or that I always had a sensitivity. And then when I got into my 30s, I found out that I had this very severe allergy. And the doctors were like, well, yeah, it's all you ate your entire life. Your body's like, and no more. So, but the deal with the recipes, and to ask you that, is that I am developing recipes for every one of my guests. And I'm going to post those recipes on the show notes so that this would be inspired by you. And people, if they want to make that recipe, they can go on and they can make that recipe that's inspired by you. But I feel like it needs to be upgraded for the awesome person that you are now. Like, I feel like it needs like dark chocolate mousse and it needs to be a little bit like sultry. Like it needs depth of flavor besides just chocolate and peanut butter.
Alcohol added to it.
Like it needs a little attitude, like chocolate and peanut butter mousse pie sounds delicious. It's a little pedestrian. It's not Laura Tempest.
With the Oreo.
That I can make happen for you. I can make happen for you.
It was even better. It's even better than Oreo. Like
I can make that happen for you. So I'm going to work up a recipe for you and I'm going to post it on the show notes so that people can find it there and make it. They can bring it to you as an offering next PantheaCon. I mean, that would be amazing. You just taste them all across the board.
It doesn't keep. It has to be frozen. It has to be refrigerated.
Just one slice. All right. So tell everybody where they can find you. Where can we connect with you online? How do we get your Witchual workouts? Where can we buy your books?
All right. So the main hub for everything is lauratempestzakroff.com. And that will get you to my schedule, my workshops and classes, which there's still online classes happening. And that's also linked to the shop. So you can get there, you can get to the art shop, and that's also where the books live too. So that's all in one place. And if you go to, there's probably a link on there to YouTube and Instagram. Actually, there is. I redesigned my website. I made this possible. So the links to my Instagram and to YouTube and to Patreon and a few other different things, you can find those all on the website. You just look for the little icons down the side. But if you just search my name, lauratempestzakroff.com, you spell it correctly, you'll get there.
And all of those links are going to be on the show notes for this episode. So people will be able to follow you, check out your artwork, buy your books. You are just absolutely fantastic. I have had the best. I can't believe how fast this went. Like I know we're going to have to cut it down for time. But I just had the best time. So the recording is going to go up, that'll be edited. But if you want the full version of this interview, make sure that you go up on my YouTube channel after this airs, and on the podcast, you could see our cats. Actually, you could see the cats. Yes. Laura, I cannot thank you enough for being here. I hope you had as much fun as I did. I think you're amazing. And thank you everyone for tuning in. And until next time, I leave you with many blessings and much gratitude.
Bye, everybody.